I don't have time to pre-warm my audience.
Well, I would say, do you need to? Are you having success already with the campaigns you've got?
No, my campaign is crap. I got 1% reply rate.
Okay, then are you sure you don't have time for this? Better put, can you afford not to do something like this?
Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of QuickMail.io.
And this is Jack from emailsthatsell.com. Jeremy, today, stroll over to the water cooler. We got some cold email topics to chit-chat about. And why don't we get straight to it and talking about warming up an audience? And
hold on. I'm making a tea first. It's going to be good. Warming up. Perfect. I'm going to have a hot tea then.
Okay, good. So are we the first people to talk about using cold email to warm up an audience? I don't know. Feels pretty groundbreaking to me. What do we mean when we say, let's warm up an audience?
Yeah, I like that. I mean, we've been brainstorming about what would be our next episode. And then as we were discussing about engagement and, getting an audience to sort of engage with you, and we were thinking why don't we actually imagine or talk about maybe a pre-warm campaign where you're not trying to sell anything, but just trying to get other people to know you, get other people to maybe like you, or get to know other people, and basically just warm up an audience that you're going to contact later, which is in a sense what most people do of, gurus and stuff like that. They start building their list by just giving some information, and then people are starting to come in their world, and then they hit you with a sell.
That's right.
I mean, I'm exaggerating here, but...
No, but it's the jab, jab, punch or something, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so one practical way that I would see myself using this would be to get us on some podcasts, right? I mean, yeah, you can reach out directly and that's fine, but I'm just thinking it's good to have a relationship with the influencers in your industry. And you may not want to sell them something or ask to be on their show or to write a guest post for them right away, because A, you may find it doesn't work as well, and B, the money or the value is going to come in the relationship in itself. So we're talking usually about cold email to have a strong call to action, get your prospect on the phone and close a deal. But this is maybe, it's probably 3 steps before that happens.
ABC, dude.
Right? I mean, I guess it sounds kind of off to have a friendly campaign when you know there's a pitch around the corner, but maybe not.
I love it. I mean, this is absolutely spot on. It's we don't have to warm up an audience with necessarily cold email this is obviously the topic of our show and so on, but I really love that. Imagine your prospect, your prospect are listening to certain podcasts. If you end up being on that podcast, I mean, what a beautiful warm up and introduction.
Right.
I'm hearing that person. Let's say Listen, for example, is contacting then some of our listeners. Listen is a person we interviewed, recently. Then how much of an easier job it is to just contact the prospect, and it turns out
right.
Hey, I heard you on that podcast that I'm listening every week. That's so cool you're reaching out to me even, right?
Exactly. So
I like that.
You've seen stats come in for campaigns that warm up their list with retargeting ads first.
That's right.
And then reply. It just works. So there's an effect when you have exposure first and then you reach out directly, good things happen. So what would be let me back up a second. I think before you send a single message, you have to nail down your goal for that campaign, or else it may flounder. What kind of goals should we even approach this with?
Well, every sort of warm-up stuff is that, of course, if your company is to sell a certain service, is that when you're going to start your campaign, it's easier to sell. Your close rate is going to be higher. Your call email to demo call is going to be higher. I guess it's only to sort of facilitate things and making it easier.
That's true. So it may actually, even though it sounds like warming up your list first and then approaching them with the pitch, that sounds like a longer process. But if you've taken steps to build trust first, you actually may be speeding up your sales process.
That's right.
So let's think. So are we really talking about here is exposing yourself within your segment first, through publicity, through let's say, podcast interviews, guest posting, articles shared within publication. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, now you're saying it like that. It makes me think that probably why we're doing cold outreach is that it's faster than effectively building content and doing the sort of like inbound things. But if we're smart about doing the research and knowing that our customer or potential customers, prospects are listening to a podcast every Wednesday, then we hit the interview and then we start straight away the cold email sequence. It's not so much of a long thing type of inbound.
True.
It's really just about raising awareness, which is cool. You can do that as well by, posting blogs on internet. That's fine. But I think we can do better, like posting something on LinkedIn where that person is in a connection, like maybe second degree connection kind of thing.
Right.
But that could also work because then they will see if you do a good job and engage your first degree connection, then they will see that those ones liking that. So that may actually pop up in their feed, and only if they're on LinkedIn, they may not be.
Yeah. I mean, what about something very straightforward? It's, let's say you're looking to upsell a service for people who love Discover.org. And so you publish an article with them, they share it with their audience, and then you run a cold email campaign targeted at people who like Discover.org or follow them on LinkedIn and Twitter. I mean, is that a very clear example?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
So basically the best way to warm up a list is to find out where they're hanging out, so to speak. Like what are they listening to? What are they reading? What social profiles are they following? Get in front of them.
In fact, I'm thinking from your example, I was thinking of something else at the same time. Pre-warming is great before you even got the offering, because then you're genuinely connecting with people. You have nothing to sell to them yet.
Yeah.
And it could be, we're thinking about not B2C, but like B2B at a like super large scale. But your industry may actually be pretty small, maybe like 1,000 financial planners or...
Most of them are, I think, when you get right down to it.
It could well be like introducing yourself as like, hey, basically a little bit of a story, whether you're coming from a certain school they've been attending to or are going to present at a certain show that they will attend because they attend every year.
Right, that's a good one.
And
right.
And I'm thinking just basically saying like, hey, look, I got nothing to sell to you, which basically will put the guards down of people, because then it's like,
yeah,
it's cool. You're not, short-term thinking. And then that means you're valuing the relationship we're going to have, where so many sales stuff are transactional at this stage. So you're going to start saying like, hey, I value our relationship. I'm maybe new to an industry. I may come to attend some of the show that you've been publicly voicing that you're attending every year, whatever. I would really love to learn more about this industry. We're currently, building something. You can even think like actually market add-ons to a certain product that is having already like a certain niche, like maybe there's 2,000 people using a certain software and you're planning to do an add-on for this software.
Okay, give me an example. Let's pick Slack. They've got plenty of users and you want to build an add-on.
I wouldn't pick Slack specifically in this example because that's exactly what I say. It's going to be like a too big a market. But if, let's say HubSpot at the time, I'm picking HubSpot because I've been listening to Disrupt recently, which was kind of fun. It's a story of one guy that was there during the sort of like what the fuck period of the startup growth. And basically they had this conference every year that they put in place. And of course, there's only 1,000, 2,000 or 3,000 people that attend. So obviously your niche is very narrow. And if you manage to build an add-on for such early stage product, for example, then you're going to get a lot of exposure. Maybe you'll be invited as a speaker of this conference, right? So again, you will pre-warm your audience and everyone on that list is potential prospect, which is not the case for Slack. There's too many thousands of companies, fills too many different roles. It's not just for marketing.
Yeah, look, and I get it. Like I understand the benefit of softening the ground before you approach people through cold email. I'm sure it'll work. In fact, I've had campaigns where I run it on behalf of someone who's like big in the industry. She's given keynote presentations and people are just stoked to get a message from her. And
that's right.
They reply like crazy. I can't take that much credit for it because really she Let's say clout was
Assets.
was the main reason for the reply. Okay, so I get it. I'm a believer. But here's a problem I run into. I'm a list builder to the core, I suppose. And I'm wondering, all right, conferences, yeah, you can build a list, but what about, you're not going to build a podcast list. Nobody's going to give you access to the listeners. It doesn't work that way. So if Liston came on our show and then said, cool, now let me reach out to their listeners, it ain't going to happen. So how can we get around that?
I think you're right. At the same time, it's because the show is not specific enough. Let's say, for example, you know that a podcast is listened by all the technical director in dropshipping. Or something like very specific.
Okay. No, I've got it. I've got it already. There's a podcast for only people with a job title, Chief Information Officers.
There you go. And sometimes some podcasts are the standard, like everyone has to listen to because the big shots are going on the show. There's so much value. You can't afford not to know. And that's the same actually for publications. Some publications are extremely niche. Maybe they go to 100, 200, 300, but you can be sure that everyone in the industry knows about this thing. A good example would have been Develop, or there was a magazine in the UK for video game developer, and everyone knew about it.
Got it.
Everyone received even a free copy because, video game developer wanted to stay informed about what's the latest technology, what's the latest trick, whatever that could give them an edge for their game. So if you were published in those magazines, and then after that you do a cold email to one of those professionals, you can pretty much be certain that they know about this publication. But if you go about like a broad range, like every golfer on earth, they're probably not going to listen to some podcast or review or whatever.
Okay, now the wheels are turning here. So very practically speaking, this evening I could go into a LinkedIn group that's very active, and I could ask the administrator to, if I could make a post on XYZ, something super helpful. There's nothing, no pitch to it, right? And if the moderator likes your content, they'll push it through, and boom, you've just got in front of a couple hundred people that are perfect to receive your cold email. And it's very easy to build a list within a LinkedIn group. That seems to me like no PR necessary. Just put some good content together, throw it up on a post, let people see it, and then, cold email the folks that view it or like it or everyone else in the group.
Yeah.
I mean, that's softening the ground to the 9th degree.
I don't think you need to even put that much effort into it, in the sense that you can just simply display a survey. Like, say, new on the job, like if you go for, chief information officer, hey, new on the job, or new in the industry, whatever, top 3 problems that you guys are experiencing, cost, budget, whatever, hiring, whatever. And then you can see whoever is interacting with this, you can be sure that, they'll be into it to some extent.
Yeah, or much more inclined to reply when you reach out with a cold email that
That's right.
Invites them to a call, let's say.
It's a great example. I love your LinkedIn, group stuff.
It just makes the list building and the PR aspect, let's say the warming up process, both of those are taken care of within the group. It gets you exposure and the list of people to get in touch with.
Yeah, you can do the same thing on Facebook. I know you're not a big fan of Facebook, but there are some specific groups that actually touch on specific topics. And, engaging them into good, thoughtful questions could effectively be a treasure right there.
It's like a lead magnet at that point.
Yeah.
It gets them into your universe.
I like that.
All right, let's get a little bit more creative here.
Oh, and one more thing I'd like to add, actually. If you do want to pre-warm and you already have a product, just give away some information. It's like, hey, by the way, I thought I would share with you guys our top 3 problem experienced by, lead generation agencies, for example.
And that's cool if you're attracting people who care about finding a good lead generation agency, for example. Just tailor that information to whoever the end user would be, right?
That's right. Yeah, you would.
And so typically, if you're passionate enough to start a business, you should be passionate enough to cobble together some content that end user would care about, right?
I like that.
Okay, but I want to think of a third very practical example besides the LinkedIn group and the Facebook group. I guess we mentioned conference attendees. That is very much doable. You'll just need to work on getting some exposure at the conference, like a speaking gig, because once you do that, the list will be easy to get from that point. Let's try and give our listeners one more source for this warm-up example here, warm-up activity. And actually, I'm maybe cutting ourselves short. You also mentioned Develop, that industry-specific magazine.
Yeah, magazines, everything that you can think of as the authority in that industry. If you can reach out to that and be published to that, you automatically gain authority.
So here's what that would look like. You would cold email the content editor for that magazine and say, hey, I'm working on XYZ. Can we put together a story?
I love it. I would probably even take the road of saying, like, let's say, for example, we have a magazine in cold email that is, the big reference. Then I will contact them and say, hey, I got quick mail. I'm happy to give any data your user may find. What would you actually think your user would be interested in? So I can create an article based on that using my own data. And then that's a much easier sell than actually saying, like, I got X, do you want to buy it? So
very true. Yeah, just making sure to frame it so that, just keep in mind, the editor of that publication, whether it's a website or magazine or trade show, they need to get their audience deeper and deeper engaged with that brand. So they live and die by their subscription count, by their readership, by their traffic. So if you can turn whatever information you're willing to share with them into a way to better get their readers engaged with them, would your audience like if I put together a report on XYZ? I think that's the right way to frame it. And from there, the next step is quite simple. It's just reaching out to that subset of the industry that the publication serves. And then boom. This is interesting because if you do this, you don't have to become famous in your industry in order to get the kind of revenue that a famous person, a famous CEO may be able to attract. Instead, it's just niching down, just owning that tiny space, and off you go.
Yeah, and it's actually super easy to do with Facebook as well. So imagine you go to Facebook page, you can basically target everyone who actually liked this page.
It's as if you could, I don't know, download everyone who holds a loyalty card to QuickMail or to Discover, whatever.
We don't have any loyalty card on QuickMail.
You don't? I thought I had one in my wallet. Okay, but that's the idea, right?
It's just yours. I just did one for you. Which is the beauty here, is that we're not constrained to just one way of doing things. And it doesn't have to be a hack. I think the underlying strategy is that how can I find value for my users or for my prospect, even if I may not have a product right there to sell to them, right? So that could be a survey, that could be a report, that could be some data you have access to, they don't, just education, 3 course, whatever kind of thing you can come up with. And the way it's being delivered is an interesting thing. It could be on stage, it could be through a publication, through a podcast. It's like so many of the ways to sort of like pre-warm your audience, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And I think the big idea here is that you're just using cold email in order to reach that audience first. So yes, you could sit there and create the content and post it on your website, but no one's going to see it unless you go out there and present it to the right group or person that can amplify it. Jeremy, there's a good story that ties into this. Do you know the app Headspace, the meditation app?
Just by name, tell me.
They have a really good episode on how I built this, the NPR podcast, how companies were born. But
this episode is sponsored by...
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. But I was always interested in what that tipping point was for this app, for them to get, 100 million in revenue just selling meditation program on a app store.
They must be meditating on their pile of cash, of course. Well, we're going to use the money for, let me meditate on
Focus,
that
Jeremy.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
It's a water cooler, come on.
Here's what happened. So they used this exact approach. They reached out to someone at Virgin Atlantic, the airline, and said, we have basically some hours of meditation content. Would you want to put it on the flights? We won't charge you a penny for it. You can just have it sitting on your sort of interface. And if a passenger wants to meditate, they can use our app. It's free. We're just getting started.
Nice.
And it worked. And they got on the Virgin platform. And like from there, just like sales boomed. It was basically like a 0 to a million event just by getting that exposure.
Yeah, they managed to tap into this channel. Yeah, I like that.
They did the same thing with, it was like the London Times or something like that. They wanted to put out how to meditate for the new year kind of, and they went to them for the brochure. They said, hey, can you put some content on helping our readers? And that was kind of it. That was like the big pivot moment. And I was asking myself if they used cold email to set that up or if they use network, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
They had some piece that was very valuable to a specific audience. They put it together and got the exposure they needed. And we're talking here like a 1-2 punch. We're talking use cold email to get exposure, get in front of this audience with great content, and then follow up with a targeted cold email campaign to people who have consumed that content. So it may be that all you really have to do is get this like first element, this warm up done well. Like you may find if you do that keynote speech, you don't have to prospect anymore because people are coming to you because they want to buy what you have. But we're taking this actually a step further. It's kind of like PR and then like a laser targeted cold email campaign to get those people more engaged with you.
I like that.
It just goes one more step than leaning on PR to do all of your selling. It's just maybe doing half or just a warm up and then you carry it through with a cold email. I'm just curious, what point in a marketing effort do you think this makes the most sense? Way early on, or for someone who's maybe tried cold email and didn't really make it happen?
Yeah, that's a great question because I can see pros and cons, and I actually experience pros and cons of both approaches. One, when you don't have the product yet, and when you have a product. And a lot of it is due to timing, really. Like the meditation app would have totally flopped if meditation no one gave a crap about, right? I think it's only because they managed to be at the intersection of, right, the audience is ready for that sort of product right now as well. And then they had the exposure and then boom, that works. It's like Bitcoins, right? If today I do a Bitcoin app, no one, barely blink an eye. But if I was doing it at the craze of, Bitcoin going up, then everyone will be jumping on it. So I guess there is also this timing thing about, is my audience ready for that product right now? Is that an interesting spot for them? Or is my market shrinking as well? Like there is lots of consolidation and they need to get some information outside? Or are they in a mindset of needing to connect with other people and grow their own network, or not really as a secretive, NDA type of industry? There's so many parameters that I think we can always find an example or a counterexample to whatever you and I will say.
Yeah, I think if a content marketer was listening to this podcast, they'd say, well, guys, we've been doing that forever. That's kind of our job.
You guys full of...
We make stuff and share it. That's kind of our thing, right? So I would say this is perfect.
Content.
No, but look, it's the content is 20% of it. The 80% is promoting that.
That's right. That's so damn right.
So I think this is best for someone who hasn't nailed down this approach in marketing yet. Like maybe you've got content, but you've been lazy about getting it out there, or you just haven't put stuff together. You haven't done the inbound thing. Why don't you take a hybrid approach, which this is really kind of like what content marketing is you take inbound and outbound and you put them together.
Yeah.
Create something and share it with the right audience, and then go one step further, like Jeremy and I just talked about, and cold email that group that probably saw what you did. And there's all kinds of benefits here. One of them that I rarely talk about is the downside of cold email is it's kind of like renting. Where like when your campaign's running, okay, you're going to get results. This is cool. But once you stop or once you run out of that list, you can't eat off of that residual.
That's right.
But if you are publishing and sharing, and there are pieces and videos and sound clips and interviews and blog posts of your stuff on the internet, that's more evergreen. That's something you're going to be able to bank on a year from now, even if, I don't know, you got hit by a truck and died. Like it's going to keep producing for you.
It's the same as advertisements. I know people who throw like thousands on Facebook ad or thousands on LinkedIn ads, but as soon as they stop, so does the traffic.
It's the difference between renting and buying.
Yeah. So is that fair to say that warming up an audience is about exposure to this audience?
Yes, 100%. That's what we're talking about.
And obviously there's so many different ways of being exposed, in a sense, to your potential prospects.
But then again, the method is the same. It's identify that group that has your niches, your segment's attention already.
Yeah, I think that's very important.
Put something of value in front of that channel so that the audience can check it out, get familiar with you. If you're a sales coach, you better wow them with that piece. You better teach them something before they think about engaging with you, and then reaching out with more traditional cold email. But by that point, probably won't be cold. It may be like, oh man, this is that guy, you know?
Are we just like basically rambling where a PR person will just tell guys, did you just figure it out?
No. It's
well, it is PR to some extent, but it's not limited to just press.
Yeah.
Right?
So let's just say we're talking to outbounders and showing them there's more than one way to use this tool. And one of those being you can get exposure that's going to help make your next outbound campaign much easier. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, and blow your quota.
Right.
Okay, so let's explore roughly for the last few minutes we have the potential objections to that. One of them would be, guys, that's all nice, but I really don't have time for that.
For this kind of approach?
Yeah, I don't have time to pre-warm my audience.
Well, I would say, do you need to? Are you having success already with the campaigns you've got?
No, my campaign is crap. I got 1% reply rate.
Okay, then are you sure you don't have time for this? Better put, can you afford not to do something like this? I mean, Jeremy, for that person, you would probably tell them there's maybe a gap between what you're saying and what your audience cares about. They may need to do more customer interviews.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
But this is for someone who, to me, is like, yeah, seeing results, but they want to speed things up. And they're at a point where they have the bandwidth to make content.
Well, okay, let me put it this way.
And they know exactly who to go after. Let me make that distinction. I don't think this is good for day one stuff, because unless you have nailed your audience, you know exactly who you want to support, this may be a huge waste of time. I mean, if you said, yeah, I'm probably going to build something for game developers, I'll get in, and it takes you, I don't know, a week and a half to put the content together, and then you end up not having anything to offer that group.
Yeah.
That's my fear. So,
or you're terrible at the podcast and everyone say, oh, this is this douchebag,
Hey, there's no bad PR. I think even if you're the worst person on a podcast, that's still better than
that
nothing.
Could be an interesting cast.
Yeah.
But
if anything, people talk about it. But
I guess for that person that says, I don't have time for that, what I would tell them is that is trust a component of your sell. Because if they don't need to build trust,
everybody is going to say yes to that to some degree.
Well, there you go. So the question is like, can you build trust fast enough with a cold email without pre-warming? If the answer is no, that takes a lot of time to build that trust, then you need to sort of pre-warm to actually just accelerate this trust.
It certainly helps.
Yeah.
At the same time, you're not selling in a cold email, so the trust can come after the conversation started. But look, I would say to the person who's like, yeah, this is nice, guys, but I don't have time for that, I would say that's really the problem. If you knew this stuff worked, for sure, if you knew this like simple approach would 10x your business, you would either make time or you would pay someone to do this for you. It's not a time problem. It's just a belief. Is this going to be a smart way to spend your money or your time? And I would say to that person, if you've got your target audience figured out, if you've already been selling stuff, then you owe it to yourself to just try out what this kind of exposure can do for not only your sales, but like your kind of marketing assets. It's going to be there for years, as opposed to a cold email campaign, which you need to put wood into the furnace or else it goes out.
Yeah, and look, even Coca-Cola is still, doing like advertisements on TV and stuff like that to bring awareness, even though you would think everyone knows them already, right?
Right. It's fleeting, as are all things.
Any other objections?
And we leave you with that.
Yeah, right.
Any other objections? I mean, I just hope we didn't piss off any content marketers out there because they want to smack us for stating the obvious.
I think it's great to stir up some controversy, So I'm happy with that.
I agree.
And actually, that could be a really good thing to pre-warm your audience. Polarize your audience. There you go.
Pick a strong standpoint.
Just make some broad, big statement where one part of the people will say, hell yeah, and the other part will say, what the hell? No way.
All right, I'll put that content marketing thing to rest right now. It's like, I think we've described everything except content marketers aren't doing cold email outreach to the people that are audience members. They maybe do cold email outreach to people who can promote their stuff, can share a backlink, can mention them on social. all that stuff they're great at. But we're talking about getting down into the lower levels and reaching out like to one potential customer at a time after you've got that exposure. And that's the gap that I think a lot of PR and content marketing aren't even considering.
Yeah.
But as we know from cold email, it works. So lots to do with this medium, Jeremy.
Yeah. Any last objections you can think of?
Objections to doing this?
Yeah.
Why it wouldn't make sense? If I want to retire and I don't feel like sticking around for this content to pay off.
I only got like 3 weeks to retirement. Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, I think you got to play a bit of a longer game here.
Well, that's a good question. How quick do you think we can get return on investment of our time? Because I reckon that could happen really, really quick.
Well, I'll say this. I like to do guest posting for other outbound sales type blogs. And I can tell you every time I post an article, I get clients. And so if it's posted on Monday, I'll get an inquiry Monday afternoon for someone who wants to work with me. So it's immediate in that regard. However, it takes lots of time to get on their content calendar and put the piece together and plan this outreach stuff. Like that probably takes months, not weeks. And so it's kind of going to depend. Somebody told me if you're one who can just crank out guest articles all day long, and at a reasonably fast clip, then that could be all the marketing you need to do in a lifetime. But I'm just a slow writer. I take probably a full-blown week to put anything that's worth reading out there, or at least doesn't sound like kindergarten garbage. But it's going to depend on your content game or your team who's behind that. Maybe we'll have a content person jump on the show and see what they're doing with outreach.
So your next book is going to be available on Audible.
On Audible. Oh my God, not even. Audible 2031.
There you go. You can pre-order it at jackteachme.com.
You can pre-order it so that your money doesn't
/audio
get wasted from inflation. But bad joke to end the cast.
All right, there you go. We'll leave it here, guys. We got work to do. And yeah, great cast, Jack. Thanks.
Wicked water cooler episode. Catch you later, Jeremy. Get back to work.
Bye.
Hey, cold emailer.
Yeah, you.
If you got some value from this episode, give us a high five by sharing a 2-sentence review on iTunes.
Or Stitcher, or TuneIn. That works too.
It's a quick way to help other growth-minded folks like us find this podcast
so they can send awesome emails
and make everyone's inbox a better place. Thanks.